That introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm glad that you're able to be here after it being rescheduled from last month. And I just want to say that it's hard to believe this is Katie's first time because she just seems like a pro. It's almost like she does this for her living. But you sound very professional, Katie, and it's wonderful that you're taking a leadership role at your library and your agency to be the first one to try the GoToWebinar. So good for you. And Katie approached me, actually a couple of months ago about giving a webinar about our library valuation study. And since we only have a limited amount of time, an hour or so, I was kind of interested in what people really wanted to learn about. So Katie did a little survey with the WTKN members, and together Katie and I came up with this outline. So what we're going to go over today is how we utilize the Proving Your Library's Value Toolkit to produce the MnDOT valuation study. And then I'll get into the MnDOT study itself, and we'll talk about how we conducted the study, what our findings were, what were some of the challenges that we faced, and then also what are the next steps that we're going to be working on. And so again, as Katie mentioned, this all started with a document called Proving Your Library's Value, a Toolkit for Transportation Librarians, which was published in January 2013. The study was done by A.J. Million, Roberto Sarmiento, and myself. And since I'd been involved in all aspects of the creation of the toolkit, I was ready to take that knowledge and implement it in a study at MnDOT Library. So I'm going to start by reviewing a few parts of the toolkit and talking about how they helped us shape our MnDOT study. And then again, we'll look at the MnDOT study in more detail. So there's five main sections to the Proving Your Library's Value Toolkit. There's the introduction and conclusion and appendices, which are important, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about those today. So I'm going to jump right into the heart of the study and talk about planning and preparation, building your case, and communicating the findings of your valuation study. These three components were essential to the development and focus of the MnDOT study. And starting with planning and preparation and organizational alignment, the key message here is to align the work your library does with that of your parent organization. This information is usually found in documents listed on this slide, such as the mission, vision, core values, goals and objectives, and strategic plans. But at your workplace, they might also be called something else. And alignment refers to tailoring your library's activities to promote and support specific institutional goals. And this is especially important. We've been in tight budget times. We're still in tight budget times. And going into the future, it looks like there's no end in sight. So we have to really tie our work to our parent organizations so they know why they're funding us, and so hopefully they do continue to fund us. And as we began our study at the MnDOT Library, we gathered MnDOT's guiding documents, and most of everything included is in this pamphlet here I have displayed. And as you can see, we have a vision, a mission, critical issues and responses, core values, and strategic directions. And when we talk about the MnDOT study later on, I'll talk a little bit more about how we use the strategic directions. And this was all going on very well until our commissioner resigned and we were assigned a new commissioner. And we can all relate to the fact that new administrations usually want to create their own direction and put their stamp on things and create new guiding documents. And fortunately, in our case, the content remained really quite similar. I mean, our mission is kind of our mission. But the moral here is you have to be flexible, and you have to realize that change is going to happen, change is going to come, and you just have to make those adjustments and go with the flow. So also, in talking about planning and preparation, I've come to think about something called developing a valuation mindset. And this means to consciously think about or have a heightened or raised awareness within yourself and with those you work with about the work that you do each and every day. We're so service-oriented, and we just go about doing whatever people ask us for, but we need to think intentionally about all of the work we do and how it supports our parent organization. And if you don't have success stories, think about starting to gather them now. You can talk to your customers and see if there's any potential stories in some of the feedback you receive from them. And then with the lit searches we do and the reports and articles and other information that we send to our library users, start saving any emails with significant comments. And also if you're talking to someone maybe out in the hall or over the phone, take notes on what they say and use the language that they're using. And then also begin taking photos of users in your library space. Or if you go outside the office to give presentations or training sessions, document these with photos whenever possible. And also you can make arrangements to have someone else take the photos if you're busy helping customers. Those really make good photo opportunities also. And as you begin to gather all of this information, start thinking about what format you might want to use to convey this library valuation story to your management. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So the next big part of the toolkit is building your case. And the authors came to realize that there are several different types of library evaluation, and they're listed here: anecdotes and success stories, community and social impact, metrics and statistics, surveys, contingent valuation, and calculators. So I'm just going to take a moment to talk about each of those individually. So starting with anecdotes and success stories, stories are very popular right now. Your audience can relate to stories, and they usually remember the message that's conveyed. The challenge is in identifying those stories that can help convey your library's value. The toolkit includes 5 stories contributed by our transportation librarians, and some of them might even be on this webinar. But one of my favorites tells how the library saved their organization $1 million by instead spending $130,000 managing the purchasing, subscription, and licensing of technical standards for their organization. Your customers probably have stories about how your work saved them time, saved them money, and how the information you provided helped them to decide whether or not to move forward on a project or an idea. And you've also probably provided information to them that they would not have been able to obtain on their own. So the next part in building your case is community and social impact, also known as SROI. And SROI stands for Social Return on Investment. And this is not something new that libraries are doing, but instead it's bringing a new appreciation and value recognition to services that libraries have been providing all along. For some libraries, their space is a benefit to the organization and is used for different purposes, often bringing people together to learn and also to socialize. And this slide shows a few examples of ways we have capitalized on our space at MnDOT Library to the benefit of our department. And just looking at these photos clockwise from the upper left, that's a book discussion. We held a monthly book discussion on leadership for 3 years using our library space. And the next one to the right of that is an open house to celebrate National Library Week that we conducted last year, and we brought people together and collaborated and shared information. And then the one right below that is a group of retired scholars who were from the University of Minnesota. And they can sign up for these classes, and then in this particular class they were being educated on different types of libraries. So they came to MnDOT Library. Of course, we all know it's a special library, and we explained to them, you know, what a special library is and what our mission is. And a lot of people are like, oh, MnDOT has a library? So it was pretty cool to get that message out to them. And then finally, the lower left corner is a space that no longer exists. But when the 35W bridge collapsed in Minneapolis in 2007, the library stepped forward and offered to have a space where the public could come and get access to documents about the bridge. So those are just a few examples of how we contributed to the social return on investment for MnDOT. And the next part is metrics and statistics. And we currently keep statistics manually in our library. And we also have some that are generated by our ILS and also through OCLC. And when we did our study, we didn't do a lot with our circulation statistics, but the statistics for reference questions, document delivery, interlibrary loans, and periodical routing became the foundation of our tangible return on investment. And this graphic is a representation of our interlibrary loans that were done in 2013. And as you follow the chart across, it becomes apparent that our library borrowed more than we supplied. And so you take that fact that, yes, we are shipping materials out, but the fact that we were able to get even more materials for our staff and make them available speaks to the value of our interlibrary loan service. And then during the development of the Valuation Toolkit, we conducted a non-scientific survey that 12 libraries elected to participate in. And after seeing the advantage of having the survey responses as a result of this process, we decided to conduct a survey of all MnDOT staff regarding the value of library services, space, and staff. And to tell you the truth, we wasted a lot of time trying to create the survey because none of us have any experience in doing this. It's just not in our skill set. And we tried to read some articles, and they helped a little bit. But finally, it came to us to contact MnDOT's Market Research Office to see if there's a person there who could help us with our survey. And sure enough, there's a person who does that as part of her daily work. She was very valuable to us. She really helped us move this part forward. And she taught us things such as when you put scales in the survey, make sure they all go in the same direction. So example, you want them all to go either low to high in ranking or high to low. Otherwise people get mixed up. And she taught us that we can combine multiple questions into one matrix. So it really looks like one survey question, but you're actually getting maybe 12 to 15 pieces of information out of the matrix. And then she taught us to round percentages, so instead of like 50.5 or 50.3 to round it up or round it down when actually reporting results. And then another valuable thing she taught us was that putting demographic and unpopular questions at the back of the survey is a really good idea, because when they appear at the beginning of the survey, some people are really turned off by these questions, and they simply will close the survey without even completing it. So those were all really good facts that we learned from our MnDOT person who does surveys. Another kind of valuation is called contingent valuation. And this means to look at the services the library provides and then ask the question of who would provide the services and materials the library does if the library ceased to exist. Instead of looking at the return on investment your library provides, the question would be, how much would it cost for consultants or other types of vendors to supply the services the library currently provides? And as we went through this whole process, we were pulling our report together, and we'd have our upper managers look at it, not our uppermost managers, but my boss and her boss. And when we talked about the contingent valuation piece, they really didn't like that. They didn't like the words, if the library was closed or if the library ceased to exist. And so they told us to just take that out. They didn't even want to open that door, even a crack, just to enter that language. So I don't know about you guys, but I do what my boss tells me, so we took that out. And then the final type of valuation is using calculators. And when we did the toolkit, we looked at a number of calculators that are readily available on different library websites. And these tend to be predominantly for academic and public libraries. But because of the work academic and public libraries do and the types of customers they serve, we soon realized that none of these predefined calculators were going to work for us. And it's just as well, because we learned that calculators are one-dimensional, and you end up with numbers on a page that have no context or story component. And then in the toolkit, when we were doing the toolkit, we solicited examples from people out in our library, transportation library community, and we actually had a response back. This is a true story from someone who used the National Network of Libraries of Medicine ROI calculator to try and calculate the ROI of her library. And she came out with a number beyond significant. It was nearly 240% return on investment. And so her manager took a look at that, and she was really excited, but then when somebody higher up took a look at it, they said they had to take it out because that number could actually be used against the library. Somebody up in management might look at that and say, you know, if we cut the library in half, 140% return on investment is significant enough. We don't need 240%. So that's just an example of how some of these exorbitant figures can actually be used against you. So then the last part I'm going to refer to from the toolkit is communicating the findings. And this is after you've gathered all your information, what are you going to do with it? And as we did additional reading about how to present information to upper managers, we were reminded of the 2007 SLA alignment project, which talked about how keywords shape managerial perspectives. And so in looking at the slide here, it's like we really recommend avoiding using library language and to use current terms and even terms that are, popular or in use at your organization at this time. And also to use words that your audience is familiar with. So again, library language is very common among us, but a lot of people don't know what we're talking about. And this and other ideas were reinforced in the book, Speaking Up, Surviving Executive Presentations, which is on the top of this slide, the top image. And then also right below that is a DVD called Speaking to the Big Dogs, a Boardroom Survival Kit. And these are both excellent resources. They give you lots of tips. And I also, I've looked at both of these, and I have a bunch of tips that I gathered from reading them and watching the DVD. So if you want to contact me, I'd be happy to share those tips with you. But actually, because different people throughout your organization have to present to upper management, they'd actually probably be really good resources to add to your library's collection. Some of the takeaways, just to give you an idea of these resources, is that upper managers are very busy people and they have very big problems to solve. It's just something to keep in mind. And also they can multitask. So when you are presenting to them and they're all sitting around a table and they might be using their iPads or their iPhones, they're still listening to you. They're able to do both things at once. And also, if you're given 30 minutes to present, you should plan to present for 10 minutes and then leave the remaining 20 minutes for dialogue and discussion. Because in the end, it's really about having a conversation with them. And upon learning a bit more about how to communicate to upper managers, we decided we wanted to convey in our study meaningful information in a concise way. Our goal was to create a report that would draw the reader in, something that a person could pick up and easily get through. And we also wanted a report that would make clear the work that the library does so they wouldn't have to sit and try to figure that out, and also that it would clearly state how we align and support our agency's mission and vision. So we did additional reading in this area on presenting data and statistics and using charts and graphs, and it all paid off. And on this slide are some of the resources that we used. It's something that, I think they could teach us in library school, but it's something we don't necessarily know about unless we've studied graphic presentations or how to do graphics. And these are also on a bibliography. I'll tell you about that a little later, so don't worry about if you were going to write these down. It's not necessary. And then this example is from the toolkit. It's also about visuals. And it's included because it demonstrates the difference between showing data as text or showing it as a visual. And both are trying to convey how many of the library's total materials circulated in a given year. And so I don't know when you look at this what you see, but when I look at the text representation and I see the numbers, I feel like I have to do the math to figure out the relationship between the 14,389 number, that's the number of materials that circulated, and then the 23,173, which is the total number of materials. And so, it's not quite half, but how much is it? But when you put it in a graphical representation, it becomes very easy to just look and see, and you can kind of surmise that about 2/3 of the materials circulated. So graphics can really tell a picture a lot better than words can. So now I'm going to kind of move on from the toolkit into the MnDOT Library Valuation Study. And once the toolkit was published in January 2013, we wanted to implement it at our library. And each member of our library staff compiles a monthly statistical report that includes how many reference questions they answered, how many literature searches they conducted, how many articles they downloaded, copied, or scanned, and how many websites they located. And we also keep track of what type of customers we serve, such as MnDOT staff, city and county people, or other types of categories. And then And then also, how did the request come in? Did it come in over email? Did it come in over by people stopping in the library? Did it come to somebody's personal email through the website? All these different ways. So with 6 staff members, that meant that 72 statistical reports from 2012 had to be gone through. And I should mention that our study, it was published earlier this year. It was based on information, all of these statistical reports that were done in 2012. And then it took us all of 2013 to put the study together. So in addition to the statistical reports, we also did a department-wide study last year in April, and that became the statistical reports plus the survey became the foundation of our study. And in trying to align with MnDOT's strategic initiatives, we created this board that you see displayed now as a visual representation of our work. And this is just a portion of the board. It was much larger than this, but I had to scale it down so it would show, so that you'd be able to actually read it a little bit on the slide. And as I mentioned before about MnDOT's strategic directions, there's 6 of them, and we created headings for each of those 6 strategic directions. And then we posted pictures underneath them to show the work that we do that aligns with that strategic direction. So for example, you can probably see under safety, we did research on stop sign warning systems, rumble strips, roundabouts, cable median barriers, and diverging diamond interchanges. And another strategic direction is mobility, and what we researched under that includes smart lanes, HOV lanes, light rail transit, bicycle transportation, and the North Star commuter rail line. So that's kind of a nice segue, just getting into the whole MnDOT study. And our report ended up being 8 pages long, and it has a theme of pastel colors and faded images running through it. It has graphics on every page with a limited amount of text. And this is the beginning, this is the cover of our study. This is pages 2 and 3. Once you open the cover, this is what you see. And page 2 is on the left, and what you see there is an introduction from myself, and this gives a brief description of the study and a summary of the work we did and what our findings were. And below that is a word cloud that was created from answers to open-ended questions in our survey. We just took some of the words from the open-ended responses and fed them into the word cloud generator, and that's what we came up with. And then on the right-hand side, that's page 3, that's what we call our grid. And what we came to find out is that we have 2 types of valuation, tangible and intangible. The tangible value was calculated from the statistics the library staff compile. So I'm going to take that page 2, and I have a larger image of it here so you can see it a little more clearly, hopefully. And as I mentioned before, this is what we refer to as our ROI grid. And I can tell you that it took a long time for us to figure out how to do this, what we were going to use, and how to lay it all out. And once we worked on the grid a long time, and we had to make a lot of revisions to it, and we had to correct places. We had done some double counting in here, so we went over it, and we had to clean it all up, and finally got rid of all the double counting. And as you look at the grid, it's divided into 2 parts. Time saved in dollars are the 2 sets of blue boxes towards the top, and then also dollars saved, which are the 2 orange boxes at the bottom. And all of these are based on actual figures from the staff statistical reports or from the systems that we use. The value factors are intentionally conservative. And this goes back to the story about calculators creating exorbitant ROI figures that are hard to quantify. So I wanted to have numbers that I could stand behind if I'm presenting to upper management and tell them where these numbers came from and why they're actually real numbers. So you'll see in there there's salary figures as a multiplier, and we had to work with our HR office. We got a list of the various positions, actually all of the positions at MnDOT, and then we highlighted the positions that mostly used the library. And then we went back and we got their salary figures and benefits, and we used that to average out the salary figure. And as you multiply across the row, the cost savings are calculated. Under dollars and dollars saved, the orange portion, the first activity is interlibrary loans. And we looked at journal articles borrowed and books borrowed. And to determine the value factor for journal articles, we contacted the manager of InfoNow, a program at the University of Minnesota that supplies journal articles for a fee. Their average figure to supply a journal article is $55, and since it's a local connection for us, we decided to go with their figure. So that's where we got that number. And the average cost for a book was determined by going through the books we purchased in 2012 and then just averaging them out. We added on a processing fee since in our judgment that is a critical component in being able to find and loan the books out from the library. And then the final activity, the last orange box, is journal routing. And this is another service that our library provides. We have about 300 current titles and maintain lists of staff who want to see particular titles. This is a manual process because we've never found a way to automate it actually. So as a new journal arrives at the library, it's routed to the first person on the list, and then once it comes back it's routed to the next person on the list, and so forth and so on. And so in 2012 we routed 10,887 journal issues to 780 customers. And at MnDOT we have our own economist, and we worked with him, and he actually gets journals routed to him. And he said of all the journals he gets in a year, he felt that about 3 articles provided value to his work. And since we provide so much technical information to people, I kind of felt that that was a little bit low. But he is a highly regarded person at MnDOT. He is our economist, so I decided to go with his recommendation. And then when I tell people about how we came with this figure, I can say that this is what he recommended, so we went with it. So it kind of puts some clout behind that figure. And again, we used the $55 figure to supply a journal article and multiplied that by three journal articles of value per year to get that number. And the bottom grid that you see there, the purple row, is how we actually calculated our ROI. We took the total cost savings and divided it by the library's budget. And the library's budget includes salaries, benefits, and materials that we purchase. And we did that to get our ROI ratio of 1.9 to 1. So in other words, for every dollar invested in the library, $1.90 or almost 2 is returned to MnDOT staff and by extension to the institution in library benefits and services. And then I'm going to go back to the other page for just a minute. So in the lower right-hand corner, on the right-hand page, the lower right-hand corner is our intangible savings. And these are things, as we work through this process, we realize we have tangible value that we actually can assign numbers to and actually calculate it out. But the other part is we have intangible value. And so that lower right-hand corner is a list of the things that we have for intangible value that we cannot assign a dollar figure to. And these include things such as, what is the value of reading information provided by the library to MnDOT's projects and initiatives, research people are doing, and decisions that they're making? We don't know that. And sometimes our customers tell us that their project is on hold until the needed information is provided by the library. What is the value of getting the needed information to that group of people so they can continue their work? We know it's very valuable, but right now we can't assign a number to that either. And then another example is we have, well, another type of intangible value is that we as a library have a staff of trusted transportation information experts. You know, we've kind of dedicated our lives to this. People who are not, you guys all know this, people who are not transportation librarians could not come in and do the work that we do. So we have a staff of transportation information experts who are also viewed as trusted agents. And what is the value to the agency of having this staff, having these people on their staff? And this list goes on, and we have not identified how to quantify the value of these intangibles. But based on the results we got from our survey, our customer comments, we know that these are very significant. We just can't assign a dollar figure to it right now, unfortunately. So this is pages 4 and 5 in our study, And if the grid that we just went over was our ROI piece, then this is really the library valuation piece. And when you look at this, the colored circles in the middle each include a reference question answered by our library staff. And images that represent the question, excuse me a minute, images that represent the question were used at the back of the circle to add interest to the image. And we picked a variety of reference questions that span all of MnDOT's work, and we wanted to highlight the fact that in addition to engineering questions, we answer legal and environmental questions, and we also compile complex data. We intentionally use questions that support all of MnDOT's strategic initiatives so that as upper managers read the report, they would see something they could relate to. And on the left side of this is our comments from our customers. They're actual comments we received word for word, and some of them are from the survey we administered, and some are also from the narrative reports that the library staff turn in. And then on the upper right-hand side are suggestions for improvements to the library, and those came directly from our survey we conducted. And then in the lower right-hand corner, we have a list of our valuable partners and networks. And again, when we presented this to our upper managers, actually my boss and her boss, they thought that we didn't need to include that nobody would be interested. But we felt so strongly that all of you on this call, all of our partners, people we can pick up the phone and we can get help from you, we can get standards or whatever we need. We felt that was so important that we needed to include that there, because without that, our work wouldn't be at the level that it's at. We know that for sure. And this is getting towards the end of the survey. This is pages 6 and 7. And so these are answers to some of the survey questions. And these graphics answer questions such as, what are our customers' reasons for using the library? How did the information provided by the library help them in their work? We asked them to identify what information resources they need and use in their work. And we also asked them about what library services they use, and then also about their use of our library's website. And when you look at this, you can kind of see we made all of the colors so that there wouldn't be any questions called. So all the colors are from high to low, and all the scales, again, just like they did in the survey, all the scales go from high to low. So people don't get confused when they're looking at it. And then finally, this is the last page. It gives answers to survey questions about the helpfulness of the staff. Did the service provided meet their expectations? And would they recommend the MnDOT library to their colleagues and coworkers? And then last but not least are the demographic questions, the dreaded demographics. Because MnDOT offices are spread throughout the metro area and around the state, and staff do the same work in different locations, we wanted to know in what topical area do they work. Do they work in bridges or pavements or concrete or whatever? We wanted to know where their physical office is located. They could be in the metro area or out in one of the districts. And then we also wanted to know how long they've worked at MnDOT. And we originally had the ROI grid, this is the last page, the back cover, and we originally had the ROI grid on this last page because it was easy to find and to use. But again, working with our managers, they recommended that we move it up to one of the first couple of pages because they thought upper managers are so busy they might, start reading our report, get busy, and then set it down and never go back to it. So we followed their advice and we moved the ROI grid up to page number 3. So as we went through our study, when we turned all of this information over to the person that did our graphics for us, you really can't believe what an incredible pile of stuff we turned over to him. It was just amazing. But we had to go through all of this. Again, we had statistical reports from 6 staff members going over 12 months, so there was an awful lot of data to go over. And we went through and we picked out what we thought was the most important and the most representative to be in our final report. But even in spite of that, we still had a lot of really good information that we didn't know what to do with. So we decided the best way to deal with that would be to create a valuation website to complement the study and as a placeholder for additional information. And this webpage is available to everyone. It hangs off of our MnDOT library website. And it might be of interest because it includes a printable version of our report. Those are all links there. And there's two versions of it, because one is single pages, one page at a time, because that way you can print it out if you want to, and then the print, that's the printable version, and then the report is actually where you open up the pages, because the report was actually designed so that the facing pages work together. So we've got the two versions up there. And then we also have the definitions of our ROI measures, and we explain how we arrived at those numbers and the calculations that we used. And that's a one-page document that you can print out, and you can take that and take it with the grid, and you can go over the grid and you can see. I went over it really quickly here in the interest of time, but you could take that if you're interested in seeing how we arrived at our numbers. That's the key to it right there. Then we had to include a page of acknowledgments because a lot of people helped us with this study, and we wanted to be sure and give credit to everyone for their time and efforts in helping us. And then there's a larger sample of topics researched by library staff. So if you recall the circles in the middle of the study, the final report, those were reference questions that we picked to highlight, but we had a lot more reference questions than that. And so we have a document linked from here, and it gives the reference questions and also a graphic that goes with it. And then we also have our survey questions. If anyone's interested in looking at our survey, using our survey, taking it and repurposing it somewhere, you're very welcome to do that. It's just a PDF from the SurveyMonkey site. And then finally is the bibliography. And when I mentioned before about those graphics publications, that's where you can go to see those resources are listed in the bibliography in addition to other resources that we used. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges we faced, and I think the main challenge was that there was nothing to follow. There's some really big, really nice reports done for public and academic libraries. They're really thick, you know, they hire people and pay them a lot of money to do that. But for our purposes, we really had nothing to follow, so we had to create it and work through it as we went. Another challenge, as I mentioned before, was creating the survey. If you're going to do a survey and you have someone that knows how to do that, make a connection with them for sure. Another thing was that as we went through all of this, we came to the realization that we have two types of valuation, which are tangible and intangible. And just going through all of this, it just took a while to come to that realization and figure that out. And then also the ROI grid, as I mentioned before when I was going over that very quickly, just trying to make sense of all of that, trying to figure out how to lay it out, how to get the multipliers out, where to get all these numbers and figures. It was a very difficult process. And then also, excuse me, the intangible value and the value of reading. And we spent a lot of time. We actually spent way too much time working on this, but we wanted to figure out how do we tell the value of the reading materials that we provide to people. And so our consultant contacted Bruce Kingma, who is a consultant to an academic valuation study called Live Value, and she had conversations with him. And the only study really ever done on the value of reading was Griffiths and King back in 1993. That's also in our bibliography if you're interested in that. But basically what he told us is there's really no way to calculate that other than interviewing your library users. You have to work with them one-on-one, which is pretty time-consuming. Another challenge was scaling our report to 8 pages, as again, we had so much information, so creating the valuation website was really a key. We could get our study down to 8 pages, but we still had all of that other valuable information available. And then finally, editing the final report, just making sure everything looked good. We wanted to make sure there were no errors in it. Nothing. We didn't want to have any error, you know, any type of questioning like how did this come about or this. We wanted it to be very transparent. And the benefits of conducting the study, we have more transparency about the work we do now, with ourselves in addition to with our management. And we have a heightened awareness among library staff. So we think more intentionally about the work we do, who we're doing it for, why are we doing it, those types of things. Because there's so many things, as I mentioned before, we're such customer service oriented people, we just do things without even thinking about it. And then another benefit was that it helps us evaluate our work. Is it worth doing? Is what somebody's asking us. We get some really weird questions from the public. Is it worth doing? Is there a return on investment or evaluation in doing, you know, spending the time it would take to answer that question? better decision making in purchasing. We question some of our periodicals. We're trying to cut down on those because of budget issues, and also purchases of standards. And in some cases, we've turned purchases back to the office because it seemed like such a narrow audience would be interested in it. We decided really it's better for the audience to purchase it than the library because only that group would probably use it. And then another benefit is that we have this publication now. We've been handing it out a lot. My boss takes it with her when she travels and hands it out. So it's nice to just have a document that's ready to go that we can just pass out to people. We also have a benchmark for the future. I can't really say too much more about that except that at least we have this as a starting point. 5 years from now, I don't know where the library will be and what will we be doing in our work, but at least we have this to refer back to. And then finally, it's been an impetus for us to identify and try to find and purchase a statistics tracking system, because it's a very time-consuming process to keep all these statistics. And we're looking at systems. We're towards the end of the study. We haven't concluded it yet, but we're trying to find a system so that our statistics tracking goes from a manual, labor-intensive process to an online version where we can all work together in sort of like in one database. And this is just to give credit to the images that I used. And then finally, I would just like to acknowledge the library staff, because even though I'm giving the presentation, they all played a key role in it, including Jim Byerly, Pam Gonzalez, Karen Neinstadt, Danae Ostrud, Ching Tong, and Marilee Tuitt. And then also I'd like to acknowledge our Director of Research Services, Linda Taylor. She thought this was a good idea, and she funded it as one of her research projects and also funded the graphics component of it. So without her, we probably would not have been able to do this. And then also we had a consultant working with us on this project. You've maybe heard of me talk about her before, Kathleen Bedore. She's with Law Library Consultants, and she was on this whole journey with us the whole way. And really she was a really key player in this study. I don't know if it would have happened without her, because she really did the lion's share of the work. And I guess that's all I have to say at this point.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sheila. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the challenge that there wasn't a study like this before, and I think that's why a lot of us are so interested, because now there is something that we can kind of look at, and so thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions now. I'm going to go ahead and see. I'm going to unmute everyone. And that way you all can ask questions and get the discussion going. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'm just going through the list right now and unmuting everyone. So just 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, I've gone ahead and unmuted everyone, but if you are for some reason unable, find that you can't talk, or then you can use the chat box as well. And I guess I'll go ahead. I have a few questions, so I'll get the ball rolling. One thing that I was wondering, Sheila, are you guys planning to do this type of study on a regular basis?
Not right now. We're not planning to.
Okay.
We're kind of still catching up, because we had to set a lot of work aside to work on this, and but I don't know. Like I say, I'm not sure what the future holds and what our management will want from us.
Okay. All right. Let's see. See, I'm looking through my questions. I have more. Do you find that as far as the valuation, it's strongly contingent as far as marketing your library services?
I do think it's a really big marketing piece. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're asking, if it can be used for marketing, Katie?
Well, so I was wondering, as far as, like, do you think that you know, because you guys have pretty strong valuation. I mean, you guys have excellent statistics. And do you think that's the result of marketing as you do, or?
I think definitely yes. We've had discussions, you know, it would be really great to have a marketing person on our staff, but we don't. We try to do the best we can. with the time available, and we have to balance that with all of our other work. But we also had discussions a couple years ago about how every interaction with a person, and especially with a customer, is a marketing opportunity, and just letting people know what we can do for them and how we can help them. And then we have gone out to different offices and done presentations. Any opportunity we get to talk about the library, we usually take advantage of that.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, let's see, we're getting questions. I'm trying to... Okay, so let me just expand the question area so I can see them. One question from Carol Pazamat. How do you keep track of reference questions? Do you write them down, or is there some other way that you're keeping track of those?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, it's a manual process, and so each of the library staff members keeps statistics. And they highlight on their statistics. We have sort of like the hash mark kind of things, and then we also have what we call a narrative, and that's where people highlight something that we spent money on, something that took a significant amount of time, or just something that's really interesting. So usually everybody has on their statistics sheet a number of reference questions that were significant for one reason or another. But again, that's why we're kind of looking at going to an automated process, because it's just so much paper and it's so much work for them and for me to look at all of that.
Yeah, definitely. And then another question that's come in from Kathy Zolomeyer in WASDOT. How did the cost of the study compare to other research projects that MnDOT sponsored, and was it difficult to get funded?
That's a good question. I can't really remember. It was either $40,000 or $60,000 that we spent on this. I think it was underfunded in any case, but anyway, compared to other MnDOT projects, I think it was probably on the low side. I think some of the projects, there's probably projects around our size, but I think a lot of them are probably quite a bit higher.
Okay, and was it difficult to get the funding for this one?
You know, it wasn't really, because we've done projects in the past, and my boss, she likes working with us because we always finish on time and we always have something to show for it. And I think in some of the other research projects, they kind of have to prod people along and remind them of deadlines and all that. And we just kind of go about our own work, and, you know we have to complete the project on time and within the deadline, and we always come up with a final product, I guess.
Okay. Let's see, and then I have another question from Laura Wayne. Based on the study and any feedback from MnDOT, will there be any changes in services or any focuses?
I haven't heard anything about that so far.
Okay. Let's see.
But we're still trying to encourage people to use our space. So there's different groups at MnDOT, like the Diversity Committee and Affirmative Action, and sometimes, you know, the library has a nice, comfortable space, which is a lot different than a conference room. So we open up our space for that opportunity, and we try to encourage people, because of course we want to hang on to our space, and we want to be able to show that it is a value to the department to have it.
Right, and I was just curious because at least in Montana at our agency, people have to sign in at the front desk, get an ID badge, and then find their way down to the basement where we're located. So is it easy for the public to find you, or for people to come in and use your location?
It is easy. We're located on the main floor of the building. And actually we have two main floors on two different levels, but we're on one of the main floors, and we're open to the public. So people can just walk. There is a security desk there, but they don't need to sign in. They can just walk into the library and use us. And that's part of the reason we're located where we are. It's kind of prime real estate, which is why it's a challenge to hang on to it, because a lot of other people would love to be in our space.
Well, that's good that you guys are able to hang on to that then.
So far, so good, but I never stop looking over my shoulder, I'll tell you that.
All right. And then another question from John Tierney. Have you had a request from your executive offices for a follow-up study or some sort of presentation follow-up on a regular or annual basis?
We have not. I actually was not the person that presented our study to upper management. It was my boss's boss's boss kind of person, sort of an assistant division director, and she took an interest in the study, and she was the one that actually presented it to the upper management for us.
Okay. And do you keep track of requests for study materials for tests, and how do you categorize or tie into agency priorities? And that's from Carol.
Yes. Can you repeat the part about the testing materials?
Absolutely. Do you keep track of requests for those materials for tests? I'm guessing they're probably like the PE materials.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't think we do keep track of that in particular, but that's a really good idea. We have a limited set, somewhere around eight complete sets of all the testing materials, and they're very popular. They go out. We have the tests probably like you guys do twice a year, and but we could get those statistics just by searching on those titles because they're restricted. They're only available for testing purposes. And then what was the second part of that question?
And then the second part is, how do you categorize or tie into the agency priorities?
Well, I'm kind of thinking we did that with the strategic directions and showing, showing how we support all of MnDOT's work.
Mm-hmm.
And another initiative we've taken up, this is with the pooled fund study. I'm sure people are familiar with this, but we've, for about a year now, we've been working on trying to get the ASTM AASHTO portal at MnDOT here.
Yes.
So I think that really ties into their, they kind of gasp at the amount that it costs. But, but we did a survey, we had the free trial for everyone, and now we're working with our upper managers to hopefully be able to implement this, which our whole agency, all the districts, everybody around the state would benefit from it.
Oh, excellent.
It's just a hard sell because of the dollar figure.
Yeah, but that's probably where like statistics and customer feedback would come in, I would imagine.
Yeah, actually we did a survey of all MnDOT staff about the ASTM and AASHTO use, and we got some really good feedback and really good comments. And I will say it was a lot easier for us to do that survey after having done the one for the valuation study. We still got stuck a little bit, so we called the person back to help us again, and she came back and helped us with our questions. But yes, we got really valuable information from that.
Excellent. And as I was actually, and that was the marketing research person that helped
Correct.
you? Okay.
Correct.
And did she give you any advice as far as getting people to respond to surveys?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, in addition to putting the demographics and unpopular questions at the back, that was one thing. But then I asked her about what day to send it out, and Tuesday is a good day to send it out because, people come in on Monday, they've got all the email from over the weekend and, trying to get up to speed. But Tuesday is a really good day to send it out. And so we sent it out, and we gave them about 2 weeks to respond. And actually, when this was going on, it was April of 2013, and we were having snow, so a lot of our people were out in the field anyway, plowing and stuff.
Oh.
But we decided to extend it another 2 weeks, and then we sent out another announcement, and that went out to all MnDOT staff.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like that would be helpful to have someone like that with those kind of things.
It is. It's a real skill. It's a real skill to be able to anybody can do a survey. I think we're all getting surveys all the time, like you do online shopping, was this good or bad, or, the one survey questions, but we also get the kind of lousy surveys too, and who wants to take those?
Exactly, yeah.
So if you're going to do a survey, make sure it's a good one, otherwise it probably won't turn out too well.
And send it out on a Tuesday.
I will say that we got comments. We had people say, that's the best survey I've ever taken, and then we got comments, that was a terrible survey.
Oh no.
So who do you believe? I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sheila. We are about at the top of the hour. And again, I'm going to stop